Good morning, class. Welcome to our second lecture of international business. Having a recap of what we did yesterday, we looked at the definition of what international business is, and then we concluded to say that international business is a transaction that involves dealings from one country to another country. It's a transaction that involves goods and services crossing borders from one country to another. We also looked at the modes of international business. How can international business move from one country to another country? We realized to say that some modes of international business included import and export. We also looked at another mode of international business to be foreign direct investment, which occurs in two types: either you investing in an already existing structure or starting a greenfield investment, which is starting investment from scratch. That is what we looked at yesterday concerning the introduction part of international business. We also looked at the environments in which international business operates. We looked at three environments in which the international business operates, and that includes the domestic environment, foreign environment, and the international environment. And I took time explaining what all these environments talks about. We further looked at the other component, which involved the type of risks that are associated with international business. We looked at 4 types of risks that are associated with international business, and these risks include commercial risks, cultural risks, and also we looked at the third one, which is currency risk and country risks. So under these types of risks, I took time explaining what each type of risk and how it affects the business, either in the domestic economy or the foreign economy. So today we are going to go to topic 2 of international business, and we are going to look at international market entry strategy and strategy alliances. For you, if at all you are starting a business and you want it to go international, you need to plan. You need to think about the markets which you are going to venture into, because there are different types of markets. You also need to look at the product. What kind of product are you going to be offering in that foreign country where you're going to establish your business? You also look at the pricing techniques that you're going to use, because not every customer is going to be ready to buy a given product at the same price. Those are some of the things that you need to look at if at all you are making plans and strategies for international business. Basic decisions firms make when expanding globally. So there are some decisions which firms need to make when going international, operating either in 2 countries, 3 countries, or even a number of countries to say. Firms expanding internationally must decide, number 1, which markets to enter. Number 2, when to enter them and on what scale. Number 3, which entry mode to use. So, like I said, that there are different types of markets. We see that some examples of markets which are there are perfect competition, monopoly, duopoly, oligopoly. And for what is involved in those markets cannot be fully explained in this module. This is because those are explained on a larger scale or in detail in economic courses. Here, the thing we can do is going further defining what is involved in those types of markets. For example, a monopoly. This is a kind of a market where you'll find that only one firm is the decider of a price. So that firm has the ability to set its price. It has got no competitor in setting price. It can decide whether to set a higher price depending on the production costs that that firm is realizing. Then when we look at perfect competition, this is a scenario, a market scenario in which firms that are operating in that market setup do not set their prices, but in turn, they take prices as given. So for a firm that is operating in a perfectly competitive environment, it would do itself no good by reducing the price. Let's say all firms in a perfect competitive market are selling at the price of 5 kwacha. If at all firms in a perfectly competitive market are selling at the price of 5 kwacha, and firm A decides to reduce its price to 3 kwacha, that firm is not going to do itself an advantage by doing that. Quite okay to get a bigger number of customers, but it is going to be losing out on its profit margins. Again, it increasing the price to 6, it's not going to do itself any better because it is going to lose even the small number of customers that it was saving before at that given market price. And all those customers it was saving, they will go to another firm that is charging a lower price. So, when to enter them and on what scale? This is also a critical point because you don't have to rush in making decisions when to start a business, and when not to start a business. This is because you can rush into a business without having full knowledge or full information about the market setup. You might rush into that place without knowing really what the consumers might need in the products that you can be offering. You and I can agree that what you see good for you might not be good for another person in another location. Which entry mode to use? So there are different types of entry modes that a firm or a business can decide to use when going international. There's exporting, licensing, or franchising to a company in the host nation, establishing a joint venture with a local company, establishing a newly wholly owned subsidiary, acquiring an established enterprise. And these terminologies, we explain them in our first introductory topic. Moving on to slide 3. Which foreign markets should firms enter? The choice of foreign markets will depend on their long-run profit potential. In as much as you enter a foreign market, what will determine your stay in that market will be the profits that you are realizing. You and I agree with me to say that if at all a business that you've established in a foreign market is giving you losses as you are carrying out that business, in the long run, if at all those losses continue, that is when a firm can decide whether to stay or exit that market. If at all a firm continues to experience profit margins as in the beginning, and those profit margins continue from the short run until the long run, that firm is going to stay in that market for a long period of time. Some conditions of a favorable market. Number one, they are politically stable. Like we looked at yesterday, that a country risk is an example of a risk that a firm or a business can face in an international area. The political structure of that country might determine how well a firm is going to operate in that foreign area. This is because the policies that a given government might establish might cause a firm to stay or exit a given market. For example, like we looked at yesterday, the policies that led Coca-Cola to exit the Indian government. It was because of the policies that were being implemented during that period and the current government of that period. Another condition, the firms must have free market systems. We know that every person who's running a business or operating a business is going to stay in a given market setup if at all the tax rates, the trade policies are given on a free basis. If the tax rates and the trade policies are not favorable for a firm to operate in a given market, that firm or business is not going to stay in that market for a long time. Another reason for favorable markets, have relatively low inflation rates. When we look at, for example, the quarter dollar exchange rate, we realize to say the quarter is not doing well against the dollar. And if this behavior of the quarter fluctuating continues to go for a long time or over a long period of time, a lot of businesses will be less interested to stay in this market. This is because the fluctuations of the quarter are causing inflation rates to increase at the end of the day, meaning that our quarter will purchase fewer goods using a lot of units. Have low private sector debt as well is another favorable characteristic for the market. Moving on to slide 4. The other characteristic of a desirable market, moving on to slide 4, less desirable markets. So these are the opposites of the pros which we looked at of the desirable markets. So some characteristics of the less desirable markets are politically unstable, have a mixed or a command economy, have excessive levels of borrowing. So when we say politically unstable, we simply means that the the way the political system operates is not favorable for firms and other business entities to operate. They make decisions that are drastic at any given point in time, and those decisions might not be favorable for the continuity of a firm to operate in that given area. Have a mixed or command economies. When we look at what caused the Indian government to force the Coca-Cola company out of their country, it was because of the command political structure that they had during that period. Then point number 3, have excessive levels of borrowing. We see if at all an economy is not doing well when we look at the levels of its borrowing. For an economy that's doing well, it has less borrowing and has a higher levels of investing. Markets are also more attractive when the product in question is not widely available and satisfies an unmet need. So these are some examples which explain why a monopoly would decide to fix its price. When a product is not common, when a product is not common, the firms that are producing that product, when that product is not common, will experience profit. And when firms continue to enter that market, or when other businessmen and women continue to enter that market selling the same product, the profit margins which those firms experienced when starting the production of that product, the profit margins will reduce with time, and in the long run, those profit margins will become normal profits from supernormal profits. When should the firm enter a foreign market? Once attractive markets are identified, the firm must consider the timing of entry. Entry is early when the firm enters a foreign market before other foreign firms enter. So there are some advantages and disadvantages if at all a firm enters a foreign market earlier than other firms. When a firm enters the foreign market earlier than other firms, we see that that firm will be able to get the whole entire consumer demand for a given product that it will be producing in that area. And then a disadvantage of a firm entering a market earlier than any other firm will be that that firm will not have the experience to produce as it has to produce, because it is not familiar with the product, the quality and the type and the taste or the preferences the consumers in that given area desire. And then entry is late when the firm enters the market after firms have already established themselves in the market. This also has advantages and disadvantages. We see if you decide to enter a market and selling a product that was already introduced in that market, your advertising costs are reduced because that product has already been advertised by other firms. That is the advantage of entering into a market late compared to entering into a market early. A disadvantage would be a disadvantage would be that advantage you would have realized if at all you entered that market earlier than other firms by making supernormal profits. You won't be able to make those supernormal profits. Probably you will find that that marketplace is already filled up with a lot of producers, a lot of suppliers, and at the end of the day, you find yourself in a competitive environment where you are experiencing uh, lower profit margins or zero profit margins at the end of the day, which are just normal profits. Why enter a foreign market early? So we look at the advantages of why you decide to enter a given market early. So you have the first mover advantage, and then these include the ability to preempt rivals by establishing a strong brand name. So you'll be able to make your name known, like the name of your company will be the first thing that every person is going to know because you are the first person to enter that given market. And you need to make sure that the products that you'll be producing for that audience or the consumers in that given area is going to carry the strong brand name at the end of the day, and you will be able to win the whole entire market. The ability, point number 2, the ability to build here, the ability to build up sales volumes and write down the experience curve ahead of rivals and gain a cost advantage over later entrants. So we see that when you are the first person to enter that market, you'll be able to minimize your costs. How are you going to do that? The profits that you're going to realize early as you are building up those sales will be able to cover up for the later costs. And then the costs are going to be reduced because you'll be able to, you have the experience to produce a given product with less cost because you have the knowledge or the full information that you need at disposal from the customers that you are serving. Point number 3, the ability to create switching costs that tie customers into products or services, making it difficult for later entrants to win business. So if at all your business is well established, and then you are dealing with a number of products, other businesses enter that market. When those businesses enter that market, your business is already established and is making very good profits, and it has firmly established itself. How are you going to compete with those new entrants? You make sure that you are going to be alternating with the prices because you are already established. For them, that is when they are trying to establish themselves, and they will struggle to settle because they do not have the full information of that given market area. And for you, you'll be able to alternate the prices because you have the full information, you know the preferences, you know the taste that the people need. So we go to slide number 7. I am cruising because we have to do 40 slides in just a period of an hour. So another point for now, these are now disadvantage for first mover. The disadvantages of entering the market earlier compared to any other firm. Pioneering costs. These arise when the foreign business system is so different from that in the home market that the firm must devote considerable time, effort, and expense to learning the rules of the game. The cost of the business failure if the firm, the cost of business failure if the firm, due to its ignorance of the foreign environment, makes some major mistakes. The cost of promoting and establishing a product offering including the cost of educating customers. So we see that there are some disadvantages that are related to or accrued to entering a given market area. From this slide, we can see that you do not have the idea of the raw materials that you're going to use in that given foreign market. What happens in your home might not be the case in another home. What you might plan today might not be the case of what might happen tomorrow. The 5 kwacha today that you can spend on labor cannot be the same 5 kwacha that you're going to spend on labor in another country. So those are some costs that you're going to experience. You also experience a cost of advertising. People do not know about your firm in that given area. People do not know about your business in that given area. You need to advertise. You have to go into the field. How are you going to advertise? All those are costs that you're going to be experiencing. You need to educate people on given products. For example, if I told you are producing products that are used in agriculture, you need to explain to people how they work. You teach them. That is, all those are costs that you're going to experience if at all you are operating in a foreign market area and you are the first person to enter that market. Moving on to slide 8. On what scale should a firm enter foreign markets? So what should be the quantity? What should be the volume? After choosing which market to enter and the timing of entry, firms need to decide the scale of market entry. Firms that enter a market on a significant scale make a strategic commitment to the market. The decision has a long-term impact and is difficult to reverse. So these are those firms that decide to enter into a market on a larger scale. Small scale entry here. Small scale entry has the advantage of allowing a firm to learn about foreign market while simultaneously limiting the firm's exposure to the market. So at the end of the day, it depends with the strategies that you and your team have implemented when entering a foreign market. You decide whether you're going to enter on a small scale or a larger scale. Many people would prefer to go with a small scale because on a smaller scale, you'll be able to learn whilst experiencing less costs or losses because you are not fully informed, you do not have the full information of that given area. But if at all you have the capacity to run on a larger scale, you would decide to enter that given market on a larger scale. Moving on to slide number 8. Is there a right way to enter foreign markets? No, there are no right decisions when deciding which market to enter and the timing and the scale of entry. Just decisions that are associated with different levels of risk and reward. So when deciding to enter a market, it depends on your ability to manage risks. It also depends on the decisions that you and your staff have decided to implement at the end of the day. Those are the things that are going to influence you when deciding to enter a given market and on which scale to enter that given market. We move on to slide number 10. Influences on the choice of entry mode. Several factors that affect the choice of entry mode. So like when you're moving from one place to another, let's say Lusaka to Copperbelt, there are different modes that you can use to travel from here to Copperbelt or from Zambia to any other foreign nation. There are different modes that you can use. But looking at those modes that you can use, you need to think about the costs that are associated to those modes. You can decide to travel by bus. There are given costs which are associated to traveling by bus. You can decide to travel using boats. There are different costs that are associated to that as well. So the mode of entry that you're going to choose has costs that are associated to it, and some examples of the costs that are associated to the modes that you're going to use are transport costs, trade barriers, political risks, economic risks, costs, economic risks, other external costs, and the firm's strategy. The optimal mode varies by situation. What makes sense for one company might not make sense for another person. Just like in real life, some people decide to travel using air. Others, they see that not to be safe for them, and they decide that what is comfortable for them, it is to go by road. Slide number 11. How can firms enter foreign markets? These are 6 different ways to enter foreign markets. So we've got exporting, a common first step for many manufacturing firms. You know, exporting is just moving goods and services from a domestic economy to your target foreign economy where you established your firm. Turnkey projects. The contractor handles every detail of the project for a foreign client, including the training and including the training of the personnel that it is dealing with. So for example, the way the Chinese operate, if at all they are establishing themselves in Zambia, probably they would use contractors, local contractors. Those contractors will be able to source the human resource that is required. And by doing that, they'll train those people on behalf of the same foreign investors. Moving on to slide 12. How can firms enter foreign markets? We have another example of a mode, which is licensing. A licensor grants the rights to intangible property to the licensee for a specified time period, and in return receives a royalty fee from the licensee. So like we looked at yesterday, we saw that when licensing, you get the license and you agree to make a payment on a specified period of time. Then we also have franchising, a specialized form of licensing in which the franchisor not only sells intangible property to the franchisee, but also insists that the franchisee agree to abide by strict rules as to how it does the business. So, for example, you are using a logo name of a given company. That is an example of franchising. Moving on to slide 13. We have joint ventures as another mode as well. A firm that is jointly owned by 2 or more otherwise independent firms. So like you decide to come together with a partner abroad and do business just like that. Wholly owned subsidiary. The firm owns 100% of stock. Like this is your own setup. You establish yourself 100% and everything is accrued to you. So like you set up a new operation, acquire and you establish the firm. Ex- export. Exporting is a way to increase market size and profit. Large firms often proactive seek new export opportunities, but many smaller firms export reactively. So like we are still looking on the modes in which an international business, in which a firm can use to go international. So like what are some things which exporting firms need to identify? They need to identify the market opportunities, like when you're deciding why should I go into that export, why should I venture, why should I export my products in this given economy. So you look at the opportunities. Be aware of trade policies and regulations. So those are the world trade policies that you need to be aware of. Is it free trade? Are there tariffs? Are there quotas? So those are the things that you need to think about in as much as you are trying to use export as a mode of international business, because not all countries practice free trade. Deal with foreign exchange risk. Foreign exchange, you look at the way the kwacha and the dollar is performing. So like those are the things that you need to think about when you're trying to go international. You have to exploit areas where your currency is doing better compared to your domestic currency. That is when you decide to. If at all the kwacha is doing better than the Zimbabwean dollar, you'd be prompted to venture, because you'll be able to exchange relatively small kwachas for larger amounts of their currency. Navigate import and export financing, understand the challenges of doing business in a foreign market. So like you need to understand how how the environment in that foreign market is. Some products that you can trade in your domestic economy, in other economies, they might not be welcomed because of the different cultural differences that we have as individuals. What people practice in the eastern part of Zambia and what people practice in the southern part of Zambia is different at the end of the day because of differences in culture. Pitfalls of exporting. So like if you do not do the good work before you start exporting, there are some pitfalls that you're going to experience. So we've got poor market analysis. You decide to start exporting before you get full information of a given market. And then poor understanding of competitive conditions. You decide to go into a market, you don't know whether there's already a monopoly in that market, and you do yourself no good in producing a product if at all you can't beat the monopoly of that given area. So you need to understand the market that you're going in. A lack of customization for local markets. You need to customize your products to meet the standards of the local target consumers that you have targeted, because you cannot decide to generalize what you produce in your domestic economy to be the same products that you'll be producing in a foreign economy. That won't be welcomed in some places. So furthermore, you look at all these as the pitfalls of exporting, problems in securing finance, a general underestimation of the differences and expertise required for foreign markets. The way the people can work in your domestic market cannot be the same way they can work in a foreign market. You need to find expertise that will be able to adapt their skills in that foreign market where you're establishing yourself. An underestimation of the amount of paperwork and formalities is also a pitfall. Slide number 17, improve export performance. Firms need to collect information. Firms can get direct assistance from the countries or use an export management company. So these are some ways in which you can improve your export in order to avoid the pitfalls of exporting. So you can use management companies like the exporting management companies, which will be specialized in making sure that they get the full information that is required before somebody engages him or herself into exporting. To reduce the risk of exporting firms. So these are some steps that a firm can take in order to reduce the risks of exporting. So you can hire an EMC or export consultant to identify opportunities and navigate paperwork and regulations. Focus on one or few markets at first. Enter a foreign market on a small scale. Recognize the time and managerial commitment involved. Sorry, I'm moving too fast because the time that I'm supposed to cover everything is about to elapse. Moving on to slides, but I tried by all means to make sure that these slides are easy to understand. In as much as you're doing them yourself, you'll be able to follow step by step because they are easy to understand. It would have been better if at all these interactions were in a class, but it is challenging because we do not get to interact on that level. I do not know what you need to know away from what I have prepared. So like the interaction is very difficult, but all in all, I have tried by all means to make sure that the slides are straightforward and easy to understand. And when we look at international business, it has less calculations and you need not to stress, you just have to pay attention, like you go through the notes and everything will be simple at the end of the day, you trust me. How can firms overcome